Welcome back to Bad Points. We got Dan Wiggins with us again. Dan, we appreciate you showing up. These are amongst my favorite episodes, and I've had 7 of them, so that means a lot. Huge
Well,
sample size, right?
yeah, exactly. Yay! I'm leading on a sample size of nothing, so
You're
that's
the
okay.
tallest midget. Congratulations.
Yes.
Well, I gave you an 8-second rundown about what we might talk about. And I think that's sufficient. So first, we're going to get into the H-1B visa because you had a very nice post on X about that. I had a vague understanding of what you were saying, just due to with context clues and whatnot, but I don't have foundational information. So first, I know you have experience with this because you've traveled a lot abroad, lived abroad. Give me a simple explanation of what just a visa is, why it exists, what it does, what is a visa?
Sure. A visa is basically a government saying we allow you to come into our country for some reason. Now, if you have a passport doesn't give you access to anything. All a passport does is it's an internationally recognized ID. It basically says, if I have my passport, I'm Dan Wiggins. If you have your passport, you're Seth Jones. That's all there is to it. It doesn't say that you could go anywhere you want. It's just an internationally accepted, recognized identification card. Okay. So that's all a passport really is. A visa, on the other hand, is an allowance of a country saying, we will let you come into our borders for vacation, for doing a little business because you're going to a trade show, coming because you're a student, or coming to work. And they're all different. A lot of countries waive visas between each other, like, going to Mexico or Canada or going to Europe as an American citizen, and, going to Japan, things like that. You could just go without a visa. If you're just going to go and visit and be a tourist, you don't need a visa. That's waived. Now, if you're going to go and be a student, a lot of times you have to get a visa. If you're going to go for like if I'm going into China just to go visit family, I can just go in. I have to have a visa that I have to get, but it's a one-time visa for the life of my passport. Basically it's a way to just collect money. If I'm going for a trade show, I'd have to have a different visa. If I'm going to work, well, now I have to have another visa. And most countries that I know of that I've been in, I've been into 105 of them, they all require a visa for work. In other words, you have to go to the government, you have to petition that government, hey, I'm coming in here to actually do work and earn money in your country. So what do you think? I'm going to get paid in your country. Then they have the opportunity to say yes or no. So that's the difference between a passport and a visa. Passport is just proof of who you are. A visa says, I'm going to let you in for these reasons. That's it.
Okay, so for most countries, you can visit as much as you want. I reckon you need a passport because if they don't know who you are, that's a big red flag. But
Well,
you
unless
don't
you're coming across our
necessarily,
southern border, then it's okay.
yeah. Um,
Well, it
but
was.
I don't know if it's okay, but it happens for sure.
Yeah.
But a visa is more akin to I'm coming over for this particular purpose. I'm not just hanging out. I'm doing something productive. I'm working. I'm going to school, or maybe I'll be here for 6 months. Would that constitute a visa
Yeah,
or an extended stay?
yep, absolutely. And even short-term stays, sometimes you got to get a visa going in and out, for just a week or two kind of a thing. You'll have to get a visa. A lot of countries will issue visas for even coming to visit tourists, but you get it right at Border and Customs Patrol. Like, oh, you're coming in, boom. That's that stamp a lot of times you get your passport. That's technically a visa, an approval of coming in and out. But sometimes, you have to apply ahead of time, and they'll send you, and they'll put it, you send in your passport and they'll send it back to you with a sticker already laminated in it and all that kind of stuff. So,
Okay, so sounds like visas are pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You never hear people complaining about visas, but we've heard plenty of complaints about H-1B
yep,
visas.
H-1B. H-1B.
That was a big point of contention, I guess, a few years ago. It actually, you could argue it got Vivek Ramaswamy canceled when he
Yes.
started. He
Yes.
was the darling of Republicans. I mean, I still like him. I'm not going to hold
Yeah.
one thing against him, but he was, man, he's a great speaker. He's very intelligent. He's got a lot of good credentials, and people recognize that. But when he started talking about the H-1B visas, man, Americans, blue collar Americans particularly, got really heated about it. So I wanted to ask you about H-1Bs, kind of broken up into a few different sections. First of all, just explain what a H-1B visa is. It's obviously not a regular visa because it has the precursor to the word visa. So what is an H-1B visa?
So an H-1B visa, number one, rarely affects blue collar workers. And it was kind of interesting to see them most up in arms about it when it's like, that doesn't affect you. So an H-1B visa is basically a work permit that allows you to come and work in the U.S. It's an expedited work permit, basically, for up to 3 years. And then you have to renew it. There's a very limited number released every year, like 800,000 of them released every year. Well, companies bid for them. And the whole point of an H-1B visa is to say, let's say I run a technology company. Well, I do run a technology company. Let's say I need somebody who's highly specialized in a certain field, like, the proper way to do metal vapor deposition on plastics, for instance. Okay? I can't find anybody in the U.S. that's available. There may be people here in the U.S. who do it, but they're all locked up working for other folks, or, they're just not available. So I can use an H-1B as a technology company and say, hey, I'm going to sponsor somebody from overseas to come on in and do this very technical, very specific kind of task that I need done that I can't find anybody else to do. And if I don't find anybody else, my business folds and I lose a lot of employees and everything like that. So the H-1B was basically, how can we expedite a person to come into the U.S., work a very specific job for a limited amount of time, up to 3 years, and then they go home. While you're on an H-1B here, you're only allowed to work for one employer, the person who sponsored your H-1B. So if he comes and works for me, he can't then say in 3 months, like, screw you, I'm going to the guy down the street. No, you're not allowed to do that, because then you go home. So that's what the H-1B was for. It was originally set up to say we need very specific talent that we can't find domestically, and we have to have a way to get them in here that doesn't take the 3 to 5 years or more to get a green card. We're trying to get a green card for my stepdaughter. She still lives in China. We're on year 7, and originally it was supposed to be a 7-year process. It got pushed out to 10. It's just recently been pushed to 12. So we got at least another 5 years to go just to get her a green card so she can come over. She can come over and visit us anytime, but come on over, visit, and actually start working here. So we need a way that's faster than the 12-year process kind of a thing, right? We need something quick and get it out. That's what the H-1B is. That's what it was originally intended for, I should say.
Kind of sounds like a contract.
Exactly. It's a contract. It's a binding contract. It's between you and the federal government as a sponsor for the H-1B, between myself and the federal government. If I had an H-1B saying I'm going to hire a person and I'm going to pay them market wages. That's one of the things. I'm going to pay them market wages. So what anybody else in the U.S. would have earned for this position if I could have found somebody. And they're only going to work for me, and it's going to be for up to 3 years, and then I have to renew it if I'm going with that person, or they just go back home anyway. Or they have to find another H-1B and jump to another company somewhere in the U.S. That happens a lot, surfing from H-1B to H-1B when your contract's end up. The H-1B, the person who gets the visa, they come in and they agree to work for me, doing what I asked at the rate that we agreed to for the duration of the H-1B. And they're not allowed to go to anybody else. And that's kind of what happens. So that's how an H-1B works. In reality, though, they're being heavily abused. I've worked in tech. I've been a consultant for most of my life. I've worked for most of the big companies you've heard out there, Apple and Dolby and Amazon and Sonos and Microsoft, all the big companies, right? So I've worked for a lot of them, worked with a lot of their development teams, and a lot of times H-1Bs now are being used as, and this is why it kind of became an issue, is they're being used as essentially slave labor. And I don't use that term slave, in an inflammatory manner. Remember, if you come over, Seth, if let's say you're in the country of Texas, which is its own country, and you have to have a visa to come and visit us over here in Nevada, and I bring you over as an H-1B. And Seth, you're going to be, soldering my headphones together. I can't find anybody here locally that does it. You're going to be soldering those together. You come here, you can't work for anybody else. If you want to stay in Nevada, you have to work for me. And you're going to accept the wages I pay, right? Now, I could tell the government I'm going to pay you $144,000 or $150,000 a year. But I also have the right to say, well, I'm going to also charge you for health, and I'm going to charge you for transportation. I'm going to charge you for lunches. I'm going to charge you for sitting in the chair. I'm going to charge you for your solder consumption. I'm going to charge you for a lot of things. And by the way, I also know that because you didn't do the paperwork yourself, the agency that did the paperwork for you wants to take 20% of your salary. So I'm going to give them 20%. So at the end of the day, you're making $50,000, $60,000 a year, and you can't work for anybody else. So you're working way below prevailing wage, and you're only working for me. Well, most of the world would consider that slavery. If it not at least indentured servanthood, it's slavery.
At the very least, it seems immoral. You represented one thing. You'll make $144,000 a year,
Yeah,
and then
100%.
there's all these catches, and now you're making half.
100%. And a lot of times that's taken by companies that are in between. Like one of the large ones is Tata Consulting. I don't know if you know Tata Corporation.
I've heard Tata Corporation. I just don't know
Yeah,
anything about it.
huge Indian company. They're a massive corporation. They make cars. In fact, they own Jaguar, right? I think they own Range Rover too. They have their own brands. They do electronics. They do construction. They do all kinds of things. Well, they also do consulting, and they're one of the. I think they're the number 2 H-1B sponsor in the U.S. because there's Tata Consulting U.S. and they sponsor over a lot of Indians from India to come on over, and they charge them for the service of, hey, we're going to get you an H-1B. We're going to get you placed with one of the big tech companies to make money, but we're going to take some of your salary. And by the way, we're going to provide you with rent because a lot of places will not rent to an H-1B. Somebody just walks in from unknown with nothing behind them. We'll get you an apartment and we're going to charge you for the apartment and we're going to charge you and we're going to have you with roommates as well. And we're going to cover with you. So they end up making a lot of money on the back end, which is not what you're supposed to do. And you'll find that the typical, also the salaries that are offered to H-1Bs tend to be a lot lower than the industry standard. The average tech worker in the U.S., the median tech worker income in the U.S. is about $140,000 a year. Tech workers, we make money. We make, $12,000 a year median. That's the middle. It's not the average. The average is actually higher than that because the people at the very top make a huge amount, but that's the median. So right in the middle, if you lined everybody up from least to highest, the middle will be 144. The average H-1B earns just under 100,000. And 90% of them work in tech. Those numbers don't line up. So when the median income of your H-1Bs is lower than the median income of your tech workers, what does that incentivize tech companies, especially if they can get more workers? It incentivizes them to pay less for tech workers, right? And you could say, oh, well, why are tech workers whining? They make 144K median anyway. Quit bitching, right? The problem is it depresses their wages, which depresses the money they have, which depresses the money they pass on to everybody else. And it kind of just carries on that way. So it's essentially bringing in slaves because, again, remember, they're handcuffed to their employer and they don't have much say about the contract terms. If they want to come over, this is what they're going to live with. And they're being paid undervalued. And a lot of the money that they're earning, that 100K, is actually going to their management company, who's taking a big chunk of it as well. So it's more of that kind of an issue. It also thus ends up, I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but it ends up degrading quality of what's produced, right? And why do I say that? A person who is handcuffed to a company, I can't leave. They're taking usually the job not because they're super high qualified and there's a big demand for them. Like in my own position, I don't really seek out jobs. People seek me. They're like, hey, we asked around, you're the guy to do this task, kind of a thing. Can we pay? I don't advertise myself for my consulting, right? Kind of a thing. So that just happens. They're probably not in that role if they're seeking H-1B. So they're usually fairly junior or mid-level in their career. They're not the high-level superstar that's supposed to be an H-1B. Additionally, the employer's like, yeah, he's really not giving us, what I'd expect his level to do, but hey, he's only costing us 60% of the cost, 70% of the cost. I'll live with lower quality for now. And
It's a
so it
bargain.
all, yeah, exactly. So it also reduces the overall quality of what's being produced. But the big thing is it definitely reduces what you could get for salary as a person competing against them. It holds you down. It also, because a lot of times venture capital, and this is one thing I've faced several times, venture capital will go, why aren't you using a bunch of H-1B? They're cheaper. And you can give them all kinds of answers like, yeah, but they're cheaper. And so if you go in with a startup and you're like, hey, I'm doing a startup, I'm doing something, things like this, venture capital's going to be like, well, will you have any H-1Bs? No. Then you're probably spending too much money already. Why do I want to fund you? And so as a result, that's what you get. You don't get as much high-flying innovation right out of the gate. Now, there's a lot of good reasons to have H-1Bs. I've worked with a few H-1Bs. When I was working at Biosonics, for instance, is back in the mid-'90s, doing state-of-the-art sonar research systems for marine and fisheries research. I mean, we were doing things that we were doing networked real-time tracking on 386 SXs and 486DX computers, with 70 heads across the front of a dam, following salmon migrations in and out and throwing information from you to you. I mean, stuff that people were just like, you can't do that. That's not possible. We were doing really state-of-the-art stuff. We had an H-1B come over from Poland, but he was a PhD student. He was a lecturer there, had 12 years of experience, prior to the fall of the Iron Curtain. Super smart guy, Merrick, and he was, a good programmer. He came out, we needed him because there were some really advanced DSP signal processing things we needed. And he was one of the top guys in hydroacoustics. He had a bunch of published papers and things like that. So we brought him over. He worked for us for a year and a half. It was phenomenal. It was a good value. He was also the highest paid person on the engineering team too. Then he went back home to Poland and bought a house, right? Because he made lots
Sounds
of
like
money.
it was worth it, though.
What?
Sounds like it was worth the
Oh,
the
absolutely,
crack
and
tag.
that's the idea. It's supposed to be for that. It's not supposed to be for line level guys like, "Oh, I need 60 more people that can write JavaScript for me because we're trying to do an installer." No, there's lots of people that can do that here in the US. You don't wanna pay, a 55, 60 dollar an hour wage. You wanna pay a $35 an hour wage, and so you're just looking to buy somebody. And that's completely legit. And to those folks, I say that market exists. It's called contracting overseas. You don't necessarily send the job overseas. You just contact an overseas resource and have them do it. I've used overseas resources myself for some very particular things. There was a gentleman I used in Eastern Europe for doing planar magnetic transformers, right? Which are very, very advanced, and it's beyond my capabilities right now. And so, you know what? I said, I need 3 planar magnetic transformers to design. Can you design these for me? He's like, absolutely. We established a contract through a contract work site. He worked from there. I stayed here. I paid him 3.5 months later. Everything was done. He got paid. Everybody was happy. That's perfectly legit. That happens. What's not legit is bringing somebody over saying, hey, you're going to be my slave and only work for me and nobody else. And you're going to be locked in for 3 years. And if you want me to keep you in the US for longer than that, you have to do everything I say because I can renew your H-1B a lot easier than you can go find a new H-1B. So you're my bitch forever, essentially. And I'm going to pay you below market wages. That's actually illegal. That's not allowed. It's being abused. And that's the problem with H-1B. So I would be very much of the mindset of, at this point, turn it off. It was an interesting statistic I heard recently. Unemployment's running about 3.5%, 4%. Right? In a lot of engineering disciplines, like my own, electrical engineering, we're down around 1.5%. That's very common for electrical engineers, for mechanical engineers. You usually, half the rate of unemployment of the of the market overall. Computer science, computer engineering, they're running 7 to 9% unemployment. They're way above, and it's not like, well, there's too many people went into it. Well, they weren't all co-workers. Remember, too bad you lost your cold job, go learn to code kind of a thing, right?
You
And
got it.
they're not journalismists who got told the same thing, right? It's people who actually went to school to get a good job, and now they're finding out, it's like, crap, I've got H-1Bs who are coming in and taking those jobs. I'm even getting an opportunity to try. A lot of jobs are going overseas, but usually what a company would do if they were smart, and this happens at a lot of companies I worked with, is you spend 3 to 5 years taking a person fresh out of school, teaching them the basics of how your system runs, getting them integrated, getting them a little seasoned, and then you can let them manage 3 or 4 people overseas at the factory that's building your products, or at a research house in Hungary or the Czech Republic who are doing some advanced research for you. So it's that kind of a thing that comes together. People don't do that anymore. They just go, whoops. So that's how you would normally season an individual to get them ready to go and get them running fine overseas, working with a team overseas. Now you go, well, we're going to compete. We're going to get, Amazon, like they get 14, 15% of all the H-1Bs. So, they've got a workforce of basically 100,000 people who are H-1Bs who are slaves to them. And that's 100,000 then that aren't U.S. citizens and are now aced out of jobs. And a lot of times you'll hire somebody from India, you'll hire somebody from China, you'll hire somebody from Brazil, and they're going to not necessarily be doing engineering here. They're managing a team in India, China, or Brazil for you. And so you're kind of losing that whole ability to even work internationally, which is what made the U.S. grow anyway in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, was the ability to leverage our ability to work with countries overseas, as well as leverage our own technologies here. So the H-1B has really been misused for the last 10, 12 years, I would say, and there's finally some emphasis on it.
Well, I guess to close the the H-1B, so many 3-letter acronyms. What has Trump given a solution? First of all, is it enacted?
So he's proposed a solution.
Has it been implemented? And then my follow-up to that would be, what are the details, high level, and do you agree with them, or what would you change?
So it's been proposed, and he enacted executive order, and I've heard different versions of it, but the first version I heard, and the one I'm hoping is, look, if you want an H-1B, that's great. It costs you not $1,000 for the visa. Because remember, the company sponsors the visa for the individual overseas, right? It's not $1,000, Mr. Company, anymore. It's $100,000. And it's an annual fee. It's not a one-time fee that's good for the 3-year term of the H-1B. I'm cool with that. In fact, I think that solves the problem, because suddenly a company's going to go, well, crap, I was going to hire a guy at $70,000. Normally he's $100,000. Instead of paying him $140,000, now he's going to cost me $100,000 on top of that annually. So he's going to be $170,000. I'm not going to do that. I'll hire domestically. However, if you needed a top-notch talent, like, when we brought in Merrick, things like that, I mean, my business can't go forward without this guy for a year or two. I'll pay the extra $100,000 because he's worth it. That's what, There's one thing, like, as you're probably aware, when you're a technology guy, if you're working for a tech company, you got 15, 20 years underneath your belt, I can make 160, 180K a year kind of thing. If you're a consultant, you're going to bill out at $150, $200 an hour, which is $400,000. Now, you're not working all the time, but you could work up to that if you keep yourself busy all the time. So suddenly, a high-tech consultant, high-paid person, high flyer, things like that. When I worked at Dolby, I made close to those kind of rates. They brought me in to get their headphone over the hump, to get a headphone designed and manufactured. And to them, it was like absolutely worth it to pay that guy. So having that $100,000 fee makes it equal footing. The other thing I would definitely want to do is make sure that, I don't know, it wasn't done, but I would, if I would do, is like, what, the H-1B is only good for 1 year and it can be renewed for maximum once. In other words, if you're high-tech, high-end, specialized person can't get the job done in 2 years, then you're not really doing a job of implementation. You're doing a job of research, and that should be done elsewhere, or you should bring that person in to be a long-term researcher, because it's something big term. It's not, I can get it done in a year or two, which is what the H-1B was supposed to originally be. So I think Trump is doing the right thing, if that's what it actually is, but it's been countered, said, oh, no, it's only for ones who are being in the future. It's not for people who exist. It's going to be 100,000 over the 3 years, or it's not going to be. So I've heard a million different ways. I haven't really researched deep into it, but if it's really what he said, he solved the problem, because suddenly companies are going to be like, crap, we can't have this cheap pool of slaves anymore.
Yeah, I guess the thing that would be most relevant to the people who were complaining would be that it does protect the lower end income workers.
100%. Yeah, it protects those who are new in the field and are growing things up. The old graybeards like me, we're not threatened by it at all. We're the guys who are usually figuring out if we want an H-1B or not, because of the level we're at, the companies, the directors and higher. It's going to help low to mid-tier individuals, and it's also going to put a focus, I think, more on American universities to make sure they're covering a lot more of the bases and pushing harder. It's also going to hopefully grow competition with other countries. Other countries aren't going to be able to export their better and brighter ones, and so they're going to have to figure out how to make do themselves. And of course, competition is how, we've talked, I think, mentioned that before. Competition is how you get better, right? And having two countries compete against each other, technology, there's no winners and losers usually. It's usually you both win. It's just how much you both increase your wins.
Yeah. Okay. That was a good rundown of the H-1B.
Cool. There you go.
Okay, so this question is I don't know if philosophical is the word, but it's I guess less technical. SEC and Carr, he made comments about the Kimmel joke or whatever it was, which, by the way, probably a controversial take. It shouldn't be, but I didn't think, as far as so you can, I'm sure you can do it. You can separate comedy from like the implications of comedy, right?
Yes.
If you look at comedy in a tunnel, that's all that's there. I thought the joke was kind of funny. I mean, it was like Daily Show style. Jon Stewart would say something, play a clip of a Republican saying something dumb, and then he would make it. It was the exact same thing, and it wasn't any worse than anything Jon Stewart's ever done. But anyway, that's not a hill I want to die on. I'm not here to defend comedy to my detriment.
Yeah.
But so what happened was he got fired, let go, whatever. And Brendan Carr made some comment like he should be punished, and supposedly did something further than that. Maybe sent a message to Disney. I'm not sure about the particulars, but I do know the gist of it is the head of a government agency made what some people interpret as a veiled threat.
Mm-hmm.
Publicly, and that is coercion by the government if that were the case. So my kind of broad question to you, and you can take it as deep or narrow as you want to take it, is should like the head, we'll just take this very specific example, the head of the FCC, should they be allowed to comment on these cultural events because it can be taken as a threat? Where do you sit on that situation?
So where I sit on, so my understanding is he didn't actually do anything other than he was asked about, well, what do you think about the terms, about what was said? And what Jimmy Kimmel said was a lie, essentially. And, a provable lie on top of that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And one of the things with the FCC and the rules that they're given on over-the-air broadcasts only, doesn't apply to cable. Cable, you can lie all you want because it's not FCC regulated. Over the air, public airwaves, you got to tell the truth, or what you believe to be the truth. You can't say, oh, if you didn't know it was truth, that's okay. Not a problem.
I mean, that's the defense he would use.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of a I mean, it's good to I'm glad you said that, it's good to know, but it's
Yeah,
irrelevant in this case because there's always Marxists, all they do is lie, so they're always gonna be like,
percent. Yeah,
I did." Yeah.
exactly. And and that could get them in trouble, and it has got them in trouble in the past. I mean, look at all the money that's getting paid out by all the news for all the stuff they're doing. But he was asked like, "Hey, what do you think about Kimmel's, statement?" And whether you think it was funny or not is irrelevant. It was poorly timed. He should have waited a couple more weeks. I mean, the guy hadn't even had a memorial service, right? Don't do that. That's kind of bad. Bad taste. Wait until the body's cold, as we used to say, right? Is it too soon? Is it too soon, right? So, um, do that kind of thing. My understanding was Carr said, well, if that's what he said, it's something that we should look into. And that was it. He didn't say we were going to look into it. He didn't say, oh, I'm going to prosecute him if they did it. He said it's something we may want to look into. Why? Because it's an actual violation. In other words, if somebody went to Carr and said, hey, I was watching the local news in Dallas, Texas, and Seth Jones was on there, and he dropped the F-bomb 3 times, and they broadcast it. Carr, what do you think we should do? He goes, well, if he did that, we should look into that because that's a violation of the FCC rules. Same bloody thing. There's nothing there. What happened, though, was Carr didn't push to get him fired, didn't push to sue Disney, none of that kind of stuff. What happened was Sinclair and Nexstar, huge conglomerates, 30, 50, 60 TV stations right across the U.S., they went to Disney and said, we don't like it. We represent red and more conservative neighborhoods that already have terrible watching at Kimmel. We're not going to put the Kimmel show on. We're going to put something else
So
on its place.
they're Kimmel Show's customers, they're Disney's customers.
Yep, they're Disney's customers. They buy ABC, Disney stream, and they're like, we're not going to show that part. We put our own local stuff on. Goodbye. And Disney's like, holy crap, that's like, 35% of our stations. What we're already losing money on Kimmel, just like they're losing money on all of them because we know that, the numbers are out there publicly. Now we're going to lose 35% of the revenue on top of that. Dude, we got to think about letting you go. They didn't fire him. What they did is like, we're putting you on indefinite leave, suspension, and figured it out. Well, they came back. They figured out, well, we're going to put it back on. And so he wasn't real fired. He was indefinitely suspended. And there's a difference. We see suspensions all the time in sports, right? Indefinitely suspended. 5 games later, the guy's back in, right? Just for the playoffs. We need him. So he was indefinitely suspended, and they brought him back in. Now, Sinclair and Nexstar, they've said, that's fine. We're still going to show a show. And so now Disney is left in the hard position. I think the FCC, now to get back to your original question, the FCC and the government saying, hey, we think that might be a violation. I don't see that as a problem at all. It's like if a cop pulls me over for his saying, I'm claiming you're speeding. Great. You know what? He's letting me, I think you were speeding, and I'm going to, here's a citation, or I'm going to tell you to slow it down. Doesn't matter if it actually happened or not. It's the same kind of thing of like, hey, guys, if you're actually stepping over the line, by the way, we will correct you because you're stepping over the line. It's that kind of a correction. I don't see it as coercion at all, in that there was no threat ever issued of, if you don't get rid of him, we will take your license. That was never even hinted at. And the worst that would happen, because it's happened before with these kind of things, is like, we'll look into it. We find out it actually was a violation. Great. You can get fined $5 million or $10 million. You can still keep broadcasting. We're not taking your license. You can leave them on wherever you want, but we're going to fine you for it. Or ABC will come and settle like they've done a couple times with Trump for CBS for literally lying about what was going on and broadcasting it. He took him to civil court. He didn't even worry about trying to force the FCC to do anything. If anything, that would be the case where a president could go, I'm now president. Here's a proven lie. Take their license. He didn't even do that. He went and sued him in civil court, and they settled because they're like, yeah, we lied. We're right. So I don't see this as coercion at all. I see this as people trying to blow it up to be coercion because they don't like the president, they don't like the administration. But there was no coercion there at all.
Okay.
So in my opinion, unless the government actually starts sending official letters on government letterhead, there's no coercion.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of my next question is if he did say something akin to those Democrats need to watch what they say because, if I don't like what they did and they better handle it themselves or we might have to handle it. That could be interpreted as in a perfect world where everyone's kind of on the same page like America used to be. That would come off as aggressive, but not like a threat to democracy. But if he's saying it like a mob boss, an offer you can't refuse, that would be a problem. So let's say he did say that, like it seemed overtly like a threat. I mean, would you litigate to fix that type of behavior? Or would you say, hey, they got the government right now. It is what it is. Other side's going to do it too.
I mean, I think if he came out and said, look, unless they fire Kimmel for what he did, we are going to prosecute them for what he said. If he came out and said that, I'd be the first to say that's just bullshit. That's wrong. That's like saying,
Well,
Second day back in high school, you're talking back to the class. The teacher's like, "Hey, do it again. You're going to get detention." That's like me saying, "The first time you do it, I'm pushing to get you expelled." There's you give a little bit
yeah,
of
there's
grace,
levels
right?
to it.
Yeah.
Let
So it's
me
one
let me
thing to
take
say,
let me actually take it back. Not I mean just back a little bit. If there's no overt threat, but there's definitely a subversive threat, a
yeah,
threat underneath it, and it's very clear. Because I always try thinking loopholes. Because everyone uses loopholes. Always use loopholes. How would you handle that? Would you, if you're an independent and you got to fix that somehow? How would you fix it? Or would you say, hey, the Republicans have power; they can bully the Democrats, and the Democrats have power; they can bully the Republicans? Because that's what we do anyway these days.
at that point, I would litigate it because again, unless it's a direct threat, I just ignore it. It's
Yeah,
it's funny. I drive from Las Vegas to Orange County about 4 hours each way, once or twice a month, right? To go visit client, go work down there. So that happens, and it's funny. You go along, and everybody's doing 75 to 80 on the I-15. It's 70 miles an hour, right? 2 lanes each way, desert. Literally nothing for like 30 miles at a stretch except desert, and it's like driving through West Texas. Okay, kind of a
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
miles and miles of miles and miles. And every once in a while, you'll see a cop parked on an overpass. And suddenly everybody slams on their brakes to 65, right? And a lot of times I'm like, no, I'm over this line. I'm going to keep going 75 to 80. And he does nothing. Okay. It's an implied threat, but he's not doing anything. He's not enforcing it. And yeah, I'm speeding a bit. And he's looking at me going, that's not even what we're messing with. But it's an implied threat. And so everybody reacts to the implied threat. Whereas there's no need to go less than the speed limit just because you see a police officer around, right? And there's no need to drive like an idiot, like slamming on your brakes when you see a police officer around. If you're not already driving like an idiot, he's probably not going to give you an issue for saying, oh, yeah, guy's going 5-6 over, but geez, there's nothing here and there's nobody here. It's not even packed traffic. I'm not going to mess with it. He's perfectly safe because that's what they're looking for. I think you have to interpret all government actions the same way. Is like there's the letter of the law and there's the spirit of the law, and they're both supposed to be enforced. And that's, basically what the Supreme Court has said multiple times. Is like, look, you need to look at both of those. And so if I was ABC and Carr came in and said, hey, yeah, it really shouldn't have happened, and we need to really look at your guys' books, and we need to look at everything else you're doing, and unless we don't know if Kimmel should be kept on and things like that, I'd say, yeah, sorry, sucks to be you. We're going to do what we want to do.
You're
But
gonna
the
keep driving
important thing is,
75.
yeah, ABC and Disney made their decision based upon financials of like, shit, we're losing money on this show. And now 35% of our stations of our clients are going away because of it. How much more money can we lose on this thing? Because now I can't position commercials during the Kimmel show and get money on those commercials because they're not showing. And nobody's going to pay, a big national chain is not going to pay to go on each of those individual channels one at a time. I can't sell that block anymore. What happens? So they did it for financial reasons. I take very much a stance of unless the government says, no, I'm going to arrest you right now, or what you're doing is going to, result in your immediate arrest or fining. You know what? I'll take it under advisement.
Well, what about
Innocent until proven guilty.
so that's kind of we're talking about big leaguers facing big leaguers. You got the smaller people, local radio station or whatever. If they get a threat from the federal government for whatever reason, they're going to comply. I mean, 9 times out of 10, because they're like, we'll go out of business if they come after us. Let's just pull that episode. Do you see a problem with that? Or do you think it's, hey, you're in this country right now, you can't do that, deal with it? And that kind of feels like a anti-freedom of speech
It's not as
rhetoric.
bad as you think it is. I worked at a radio station a bit when I was in college, did some on-air talent, voice talent, things like that. And a couple times the songs weren't properly edited when it was a classic rock station. And so like swear words slipped through. And 9 times out of 10, nothing happened. The other 1 time out of 10, you get a letter from the FCC saying, hey, somebody complained, clean it up. Don't do that again, guys. That was it. I mean, that's the extent of what happens because the government knows it wasn't intentional. They know it's not a regular occurrence. It's not done to harm anybody. Let's just kind of remind you of, hey, here's your guidelines. Stay in these guidelines, guys. And if you're doing it every single day, yeah, we're going to have a conversation. Once every 3 or 4 months, not going to be a problem. So I don't see that really ever happening, that I've seen the government used that way. Now, I will say I have seen the government used that way underneath the previous administration. And in fact, both Facebook and Google and, the former owner of Twitter, when he came out, Jack Smith, they all said, oh, yeah, the government came into us and said, we need you to shut this down or we're going to raise this to a legal issue. And they immediately complied. That's coercion. Coming in and saying, if that's what actually happens, we'll have to think about it, is not coercion in my mind.
Yeah.
at all. And
Well,
having
they're talking about
the FCC come in
regulating.
saying, "Hey, you know what? You dropped an F-bomb. Hey, clean it up, guys. Don't do that again." That's not coercion. That's saying, "Here's the rules you agreed to. Just stick by them." Big
Yeah, and
difference.
social media companies are really held over a barrel because both parties were threatening to, what's the word, where the government takes over.
But yeah, they were trying to like nationalize it, basically, force them to play by rules that they didn't already agree to, right?
Regulate, maybe? I
Yep,
can't I
yep,
don't remember I
yep.
think there's a different word, but
Yeah,
anyway,
they're looking to
you get
heavily
my gist.
regulate them.
They were having court hearings with the CEOs about, why shouldn't we step in and regulate your stuff? And so, yeah, they were really under a lot of pressure there, but still, man, the whole country was going through hell at the
Yep,
time.
yep, very much so.
And I personally really resented them. I was like, man, y'all are citizens too, and y'all have so much power, and you could make a stand, and I'm pretty sure everyone would love you for the rest of their lives and tell bold stories about how
Yep,
Meta stood up to the government for
yep.
freedom of speech, and they just folded. That kind of makes me think there were some terrible threats being made,
They absolutely
by
were,
the
and they all went to the
CIA and
dollar.
whatnot.
Yeah, and I think, and you saw all that stop the second Musk bought Twitter.
Yeah,
And I think it's because suddenly they realized it's like, oh shit, this guy has pockets that are as deep as ours. More importantly, he has a tendency to look at somebody and say, "That's not the rules. Go fuck yourself."
yeah.
Right?
Plus, he just spent 43 billion on it, so he's not just gonna roll. He's doing this
Yeah,
on purpose. He's doing
exactly.
this because we're doing
Yeah.
this.
And, oh, by the way, that 43 billion you spent at the time, it was only like 12% of his net worth. It was like this isn't a big thing. It's not like he gambled everything on it. So he's not one to go. So I think as soon as they had one of the social media giants out there going, the leader of it saying, "We don't care. We're going to do what we want because that's Section 230 and that's the law and that's the Constitution." Suddenly, the Biden administration is like, "Well, crap, we have to back off on this because we could go after Facebook, but everybody's going to go like the same thing happened on Twitter. So we have to deal with the Twitter problem then." If we go after Facebook or if we go after Google or we go after anybody else, we have to deal with the Twitter issue, but we can't deal with the Twitter issue because we'll never win it. So let's not go after it in the first place and look stupid, right?
Yeah, and they also had they had a big issue on their hands when Elon bought Twitter, and slowly over time, because it is weird compared to some other social media sites, but slowly at first, and then very quickly, like a snowball rolling down a hill, Twitter became significantly, or X became significantly more popular. People were just flooding over there because they figured out this is the one place where people can say things the government doesn't want them to say, which is innately very, very interesting for anyone who gives a damn about the country they're living in at the
Yep.
time.
Exactly, exactly. So I think that kind of broke it. So in general, I'm not worried about coercion of the government. They have to work really hard to be able to coerce you. And really, they can't coerce you until they get to the point of actually filing charges because then it gets legal. And they have to have some pretty good foundations to be able to get to that point. They can make your life a living hell until that. But at the end of the day, I think you can always, push them back. So anyway,
Yeah, I would agree with that. You got time for one more little
you
segment?
bet. Absolutely.
All right, so it seems apparent to me that the Marxist communist street soldiers that they have been building for a very long time, but particularly since 2020, they really ramped it up with that NGO money. That army is seemingly being unleashed right now. I feel like
Uh-huh.
there was already stuff happening, but then when they killed Charlie Kirk, assuming it's the same people, this is also maddening. I don't know if it was Israel or Soros, or one thing I think we can be sure of, it was just some crazy kid. There's too much. There was either leftist or another nation's money behind this, right? Like leftist billionaires. But apparently they have waged their war, whoever they might be on the left, and it's a huge problem. So you are president. What do you do about it?
I do exactly what we did with the LA riots. Remember earlier, LA started having all kinds of problems. Second, we went into ICE and riots left and right, and all kinds of things went crazy, right? And the
No
government
king, no
said,
rebel.
exactly. And the government said, you know what? We're going to start digging into the finances of who's paying for all this stuff. And they stopped instantly. Okay. Because they are being financed. And I don't believe they're being financed by a different government. I believe they're being financed by very rich people and
No,
very
for sure.
rich groups who want to see social upheaval, want to see social change. Right. And as soon as the money stops flowing, 95% of your foot soldiers go away because they're the mercenaries. They're like, shoot, yeah, you mean I get to go out and throw bricks through stuff and chant and scream and get crazy and everything like that? You'll pay me $300 a day? I'm in. You know, I'm not there because I believe in, let's fight the power and that kind of stuff. I was like, no, you give me a good paycheck. The second that went away, it suddenly stopped. I think doing what Trump did in terms of declaring Antifa a terrorist organization, and it definitely is. People are like, you can't do it because it's an American thing. Well, number one, I thought you said Antifa didn't exist, so you're already admitting it exists. Number two, it's huge overseas in Europe as well, especially. So it is an international organization, so it qualifies for, you can classify it as a terrorist organization.
Yeah, and plus the Democrats made the Proud Boys domestic terrorists because one of them got in a fight or something.
Exactly.
I mean, as usual, the Democrats did the same thing 100 times worse.
100%, 100%. But I think now you could start doing it. You can start looking into it because it goes international. That means we can use the NSA and the CIA, who deal with international stuff, to actually start tracking the finances of what comes in from Antifa. So I can't necessarily say, once a dollar hits into the U.S., I can't track it with the NSA inside the U.S. where it's going between banks. But I can say, it came into the U.S. from this bank account, and that bank account got money from these places, got money from these places, got these. And this guy put a shitload of money into one of those. So suddenly the financiers of Antifa, international guys or domestic who are using outside funding paths, are like, crap, they're going to be able to trace it back to me. And then I'm in trouble. And even if they don't sue me, the fact that the world will know that, I'm a guy who financed all this bullshit can crush me socially and maybe economically, my businesses could take a hit. So I think that's the right thing to do. I think what we're seeing right now is it's a pretty weak Antifa push in the U.S. I mean, there is one, but it's very, very weak because I think at this point, all the paid for agitators are not showing up because they're not being paid because the finance has been shut off. Because nobody wants a dollar to go anywhere because it'll trace back to me, right? It's that paper trail that always bites you in the ass. That's how they got Al Capone, right? Tax evasion, paper trails. So what you're seeing are the last gasps of the hardcore, the absolute, the folks who are like, I will literally die for this organization. And I don't mean that like just a statement of figure of speech. I'm willing to go on and get shot to get this thing. So you're seeing those take to the street, but there's a lot fewer of them. And now you also have an administration that basically took the leashes off and said, dogs of war, go free. I mean, he's bringing out the National Guard. He's letting ICE and the FBI and all the DHS departments go, you guys do what you need to do to settle things down. And suddenly you're seeing him instead just sitting there taking all the abuse and having an ICE place blocked by a bunch of protesters. And we sit down for 12 hours and go, okay, well, I guess everybody stays here. We're not going to be able to move our buses. They're like, you got 30 minutes to clear. We're going to start pepper spraying you. And we're literally throwing your asses out of the way and driving the buses there anyway. So even then, your hardcore folks are like, do I really want to sacrifice so much for that or not? So I think he's doing the right thing. Chase where the money came from that funded it. And then start basically letting law enforcement be law enforcement and say, look, if somebody's breaking the law, arrest them. If they fight back, bust some heads and arrest them, And by the way, obstructing a road is illegal, even with a protest, unless you have a parade permit, which has specified times that it's shut down. You can't block the road. Your right to protest does not supersede my right to freedom of motion, I still have my freedom of motion, and the police can arrest you. So I think he's doing the exact right thing, which is, let's find out who's paying for it, and let's let police be police and get rid of it. I think that's why there's also a massive upsurge in people who are signing up for the military, signing up to work in the police departments, applying up government. It's like, hey, I want to do something about it. I wasn't going to join the previous administration because they don't do anything about it. These guys are like serious. They actually want to solve the problem. I want to solve the problem. I'll go join them.
You talked about tracing the money back to their origins. So I'm assuming they can and are doing that retroactively.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. So, and if they were to bust a whale like George Soros, that would probably, knowing what AI is about to do for our government and how powerful our government is, that would probably deter that entire strategy.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, just because he funded these kind of things doesn't mean that you can necessarily arrest him. Right? Unless you could tie him to a specific violent action. Like if I give money to an organization, then that organization has some people going out and they like rob a bank. I'm not guilty of robbing that bank, right? But what you can do, so you can't charge me with conspiracy unless you can prove that I was in on the discussions about robbing the bank. You can't charge me with conspiracy. You can't charge me with robbing the bank. None of that stuff. I'm clean there as a financier.
What about funding terrorism?
Well, that's what you can get me on. You could say, your money was used in it, thus we're going to lock down every asset you have in the U.S. until we determine what comes with it. So suddenly, every single financial asset that like a Soros, for instance, has in the U.S. could be frozen, which means you can't touch it. Yeah, you're still worth $12 billion, but $7 billion of them are in the U.S. You can't use them. You're really worth $5 That kind of a thing. So it's that kind of a thing. So it's less about being able to take the people who financed it. And I know this is going to probably piss off a lot of conservatives. They should go to jail. You know what? If there's no legal reason,
Yeah, I think his head should be chopped off in public.
oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. A lot of people like to see that. But what's even worse is, I think, for a lot of these folks, because they're doing it because they're true believers, they've got a full, this is what I believe, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to, I want to improve myself. And if you go in and lock up 85, 90% of their assets and their resources, and you let the world know about it, they become a pariah. Because not only is like, oh, he's still got $2 billion, what does he care? You're right. But none of his friends, nobody who ever works with him will ever be seen with him again, because it immediately, oh, wait a minute, Seth, 3 weeks ago, you had a lunch with Soros? Well, we're going to investigate you and see if you've ever shared a bill with him, because if you shared a lunch bill with him, or if you paid him a golf debt, that money might have been used to finance terrorism. We're going to lock down your assets too. So I've suddenly isolated the man from every single person he's ever worked with and ever known. And that's the worst thing you could do to somebody, is basically it's solitary confinement. The worst thing you could do. Essentially, you can make
they're like in an open air prison. They got an ankle monitor on.
100%, yeah. But nobody will ever talk to him. Why? Because the second you talk to him, you open yourself to being investigated too. So I think, and that's how, when they took down Capone, that's how suddenly the mafia went quiet for 15 years, because nobody wanted to talk to anybody else, because they were looking at that, and whoever he talked to, and whoever any of his lieutenants talked to, was suddenly getting the same kind of a treatment. So everybody went quiet for 15 years. That's what's going to happen. So I think that's the way to kill it and nip it off in the bud. So
it sounds like foreign mega billionaires, the equivalent to us going to prison for life is them having their life effectively stolen from them.
Exactly. Think about, you can't go and visit anybody else because nobody wants to be seen with you. Think about it like imagine if you're Kanye West, right? Whether he did anything right or wrong, nobody wants to be seen with him anywhere. His entire social circle, entire professional circle, everybody that he's ever worked with never wants to be seen with the man ever. He is now completely isolated, right? And half the people that he's never met or interfaced have a bad opinion of him. So suddenly he's got to be, you basically are forcing him to become a recluse. And that's what happens. That's one of the worst things you can do, right? For that kind of a group. So, you just can't do anything. You can't even go to a football game because nobody's going to share a suite with you. Nobody's going to want to be seen with you at a football game. You're going to sit there all by yourself, and you're going to have half the stadium booing you. You're not going to go and do that. So you can lock folks away that way. And then that's going to be the biggest thing that happens to it. So I think that's why a lot of the money dried up in LA when the administration was like, oh, we're going to go find out who's paying these folks. And I think that's exactly what's happening right now, why you're seeing suddenly this big surge, and it's rapidly drawing off. In fact, that's why there's more and more Democrat and leftist politicians out there getting involved, because they know nobody will go and protest unless there's a politician with them there too. Because, the politicians aren't going to get cover. Well, it turns out you're not getting cover. But that's why you're not seeing the protests unless there's a politician there, because the politicians help drumming it up right now for political reasons. Okay, fine. Political free speech, you can say whatever you want. But the second you start blocking legit police actions, or you start stopping the free movement of others, go to jail. So it should happen, even if you're a politician.
Do you think that there should be laws that allow men to protect their vicinity better without fear of being treated like Daniel Penny was treated for saving the people? If I see a man in a dress going to the women's restroom and I know it's federally illegal and I go whoop his ass, should there be some laws that say, well, yeah, he's supposed to do that. He's the man here and saw something bad happening. Do you think that we should make some laws that encourage or allow that, which would in effect encourage it?
Most states already have those kind of laws. In other words, it's called imminent threat. If you believe you're an imminent threat of your life or those around you, even if they're not your friends or family, but other people, you have the right to actually take action. And that's almost universally in all states. I know in Nevada, it happens occasionally here too. Somebody is threatened, and a guy lashes out, and there's fisticuffs, and either somebody goes to a hospital, or maybe sometimes dies. And sometimes it's not even over, the two guys like, hey, I saw somebody attacking, I went to defend them. And not here in Nevada, at least, because we have a much more conservative police group, and most of our DAs, even when they're Democrats, would be, most places would consider them like conservative liberals. They're strong moderates at the worst. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to press charges. because he was doing the right thing. So you have that ability and that authority. It's only in places like New York City where it's so heavily politicized. It's like, oh, we have a racial thing we have to think about. Race should play nothing to it. He wasn't attacked because he was black. He was attacked because he was threatening others, and he kept fighting back. That's what happened. So most states have that. Texas has it. Florida has it. Almost all your red states have it. And those laws are on the books too in almost all the blue states. Like California has it. There's no requirement to retreat. I think it's only in like Massachusetts and a few other of the New England states. It's just not enforced correctly. And so that's the problem. But the laws exist. Now, if I saw a man go into a woman's bathroom, you know what? I don't know if I'd probably poke my head and say, get the hell out, but I'm not going to go and get violent with him, because unless I know he's in there like physically threatening or physically attacking somebody, that's the whole reason. Like, just because
But when they're saying, if there are three women and they're yelling for him to get out, and he's like, "No, I'm a woman too," and he takes his pants off and sits on the, what would you do?
Well, I mean, so at that point, if there's no imminent threat of violence, myself personally, I'm like, okay, we're gonna get photos. I'm gonna videotape this guy taking it. You can't do that bathroom. You're not supposed to be in the first place. Sorry, and share it with the police and probably get him arrested for trespassing.
And of course, at that point, or decided I'm not going to hit him. He might hit you, in which case,
Oh, then he's gonna get curb stomped. That's all there's to
yeah,
it.
and no judge is going to blame you. I
That's right.
don't think. But
And
here,
my
let me
little friend
expand
out of
on
my
that.
back pocket comes out, and he's done with a few
Yeah, then it's
corporations.
over. Let me expand the question a bit. Let's say you can make a federal law to better protect Daniel Penny and men being men. What would that look like? And I already know it could be a problem, because now you beat someone's ass because they're a homosexual, and you say, yeah, he whatever. You can exploit it. I'm not an evil-minded person, so these
Yeah,
things don't come
yeah.
natural to me. But you could definitely exploit it to where now everyone's just beating the hell out of weaker people and saying, "Up, it's the new federal law. You can't get me on it." Like, there's a line there somewhere.
Well, the line already exists, and it's called imminent physical threat. In other words, is there a legitimate reason to believe somebody is going to suffer physical harm or death for what is happening right now? Without that, you have no right to do anything. Like castle doctrine, just because a person walks on my sidewalk, walks on my yard, does not mean I just get to go shoot them, right? I first have to say, hey, get off my yard, and then go, okay, well, give me a few minutes, I'll tie my shoes. Okay, great. That's not an imminent threat. If they start advancing towards me, they get perforated, right? Angrily. So it has to be imminent physical threat, of belief that I'm going to suffer serious injury or death because of what's happening. A guy going in and deciding to use a stall in a women's bathroom and pee, that's abhorrent and terrible and annoying, and he shouldn't do it. Make him a pariah. You could sue him for a lot of other reasons. The police can arrest him for, invading the wrong property, because a lot of states now have laws that say, well, you have to use the proper, you have to use your assigned birth. It's like, you have to use actually what your chromosomes say you are. That's the bathroom you have to use. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. Just because somebody offends me is not a reason to go off on somebody. In fact, that's the opposite of free speech. You don't have a right to not be offended, So, because when I say something, I can't understand how you're going to interpret it, and how I could say, the sky today is a really ugly shade of Texas brown haze. And in fact, a lot of times it is, because we have a lot of dust blowing in, and if you've ever been in West Texas, that's ugly brown haze is what Texas skies are.
For sure.
But you might, well, I'm a proud Texan, I take offense at that. You know what? You've already taken offense. I can't stop it. It's already done. And I didn't say it to piss you off. And even if I did say it piss off, that's a problem. Not my problem. You can't litigate and attack others for being offended, right? Because there's no harm there other than your own personal get a grip, lighten up, Francis, right? So that's the law as it is. I would just leave it at that. It's like, unless, in Daniel Penny's case, you saw a man who was actually physically threatening, and others were clearly visibly terrified of this guy, and he took action, and that should be accepted. That's the way it works. People say, oh, he went too far. You know what? He went as far as he had to. If the guy had stopped, had looked around and said, it's not just Daniel Penny, there's 4 other guys here ready to jump on me if I get up, let me calm down, he'd still be breathing today. The man was mentally ill and crazy and excessively violent. That was the problem. So you can only really use violence to stop violence, in my opinion. You can't really pull it out until it's already happened. If a guy gets in my face, starts yelling at me, until he invades my personal space, which for me, I define that as about, 3 feet, 2 feet. You get within about 2 feet of me, that's a problem. It's kind of a thing. Yeah, you're going to probably hit me. I've taken a lot of punches to the face. I was a bouncer for a while. I've taken more than a few punches. I've had a few knives stuck in me too. But I know what'll happen after that. I know what can happen after that. if you lay hands on me, I'm going to go very, very bad with you. If you don't, live and let live, that kind of thing. So I don't think a federal law needs to be created necessarily. I think we have laws that are already on the books. They just need to be appropriately enforced. They need to be fairly enforced. And you don't go out and get guys like a Daniel Penny who saved somebody, because that's when you end up with people so scared to do anything, like the Irina Zutskaya slashing in the neck kind of a thing. Nobody could have stopped it because he just got up and did it fast, but nobody detained the man because they're afraid the second I lay hands on him, well, I'll have to struggle him. Great. I don't want to fight a guy, but I would if I have to. On the other hand, am I going to get thrown in jail and charged and 2 years of my life ripped away from me and the rest of my life affected because, oh, he's the guy who did, kind of a thing. That's the whole thing. You can't have that happen. So,
Right.
yeah.
So what federal law in one phrase, I know I'm putting you on the spot and challenging you, what would cover that?
That you can't, the federal laws and the laws in the states already cover it. And this is what this is why
What went awry in New York City?
doesn't matter. But what went awry in New York City was the district attorney and the prosecutors. They went awry. The laws are there, but they chose to ignore them. And they chose to just go forward and do their own thing. So you can't solve prosecutorial malpractice with a law because they're the ones who enforce the law. And so they're already doing it.
Again, it goes back to I'm not evil enough, but yeah, that they literally just you they either enforce the law or they don't.
Yep,
But
exactly.
couldn't the federal government was Democrat too.
Yeah. So at the well, but again, that's a state issue. It's not necessarily a federal issue. If an issue is a state issue, the feds should not step in and take over on it, right? That's
Right.
exceeding their boundary. So, and that's kind of the whole thing. So I think if I could wave my magic wand, what I would say is like, look, every single prosecuting attorney has to be a member of the bar, right? So if I could wave my magic wand, I would do whatever I could to coerce the bars across the U.S., coerce, cajole, convince, whatever like that is like, hey, if a judge is overturned 3 times, or if a prosecutor is overturned 3 times on conviction, or they get a conviction and it's overturned later, they lose their law license, which means they're out of a job.
That would be a good incentive.
And so suddenly they're not going to prosecute. So it means a lot of prosecutions are probably going to go away. And that might be a bad thing. But again, it's the old concept of it's better 100 guilty men go free than 1 innocent man be convicted, right? It's better to have a few extras slip through, don't get convicted or charged, than those who don't. And it also forces you to say, before I charge a guy, I have to have really good proof to make sure he is who he is. I do the same thing for federal judges too. People don't realize that circuit judges and every federal judge except the Supreme Court was created by Congress, an act of Congress. Only the Supreme Court is required by the Constitution. Only the Supreme Court is required by, all the others are established at the whim of Congress and could be eliminated at the whim of Congress. And the rules can be set by Congress. That's just the way it works. So if I would push as president really hard to get a law passed through Congress that said basically, hey, federal judges, if you're overturned more than 3 times or more than 4 times by a court above you, you're kicked out of your seat. You lose your seat. You don't get the seat for life. You get the seat for life unless you're overturned 3 or 4 times, or you lose twice at the Supreme Court. Then you're out. You're just out. I'm sorry. Because it's clear you're not paying attention to how the rules are. When you're getting overturned every single time, you know what? You flunked out.
You're bad at your job. You're too bad at your job to be affecting other people's lives.
Just like if you went into college to go study electrical engineering and you failed your first freshman year, you know what? You got D's and F's the whole way through. You're not going to get into sophomore year. You're out. You failed. You flunked out. Same thing with the judge. You know what? You're overturned left and right by your appeals court. You're overturned by the Supreme Court. You know what? You're out. You suck as a judge. That's what I like that. And I think then that falls back into a lot of the cases of where you're prosecuting attorneys. I'd do the same. I'd see if I could do the same thing with prosecuting attorneys, but that has to be at the state level. That won't be at the federal level.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess that, like I said, that's a hardcore solution, and hardcore solutions to problems usually result in like elevated greatness of the field, because now people are like, some peckerhead who's pretty smart isn't going to become a lawyer because he knows he's got to be a really good lawyer. So I'll do something else. And the people who want to be really, really good lawyers, like who's that? Ed Martin.
Yeah,
he's that. I love Ed Martin.
Yeah.
You'll have a bunch of Ed Martins instead of a bunch of people that just get in there to
Judge Boasberg.
People they become cops just because they want the badge and the authority.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. 100%.
You get less of that.
100%. And and at the end of the day, it's really the rules the rest of us abide by. Like, if I screw up a project, I could get probably a little forgiveness. If I screw up 2 of them in a row, I'm fired. It's that kind of thing. If you're a physical therapist, if you screw up and one of your patients gets injured because you tell them to do something, you're going to get admonished. You do that 2 or 3 times in a row, you're looking for a new PT office to work from, right?
Yeah.
And it should be the same thing with judges and prosecutors. It's like, okay, guess what? If you brought charges and you're just, we got a conviction, yay, and then it's overturned because the higher court said, the fuck were you people smoking when you did this in the first place? Guess what? You do that 2 or 3 times, you suck as a prosecutor. You're no longer allowed to be a prosecutor. You're banned because you lose your bar license. A judge, same thing. You know what? You've issued 17 injunctions and in the last year and a half against the administration, and every single one of them was overturned. Guess what? You're not a judge anymore because it's clear you're not being a judge. That's all there is to it. I'm sorry, you're out. And so that's what I would do. That's how I would take care of it. Make them live by the rules that the rest of the world lives by. If you screw up 17 orders of McDonald's, in a day, you're fired. Guess what? You screw up a bunch from the bench? No, you're not there for life. You're fired. That's what needs to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I heard the other day, I've always assumed a judge had to have been a lawyer, but someone told me that's not the case.
It's not the case in all. So at the federal level, they are. They have to be a lawyer. They have to pass the bar, have actually a standing, an active bar membership. Most states, if you're like a superior court or higher, you have to be an actual lawyer. Some states, including like Texas, including like Nevada, and these go back for historical reasons. I'll get to those in a second. They'll allow magistrates, which are like entry-level judges. You remember the old TV show Night Court?
I didn't see it, but I
About
know
a guy
that
who came in as a judge, and it was in New York, and he did all the quirky things. It was more about compassion, how he interrelated people. And they had Richard Mole, Bull, the big, 6'8" bailiff and things like that. It's a TV show from like the late 70s, early 80s.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was good. Watch it. It's funny. It's actually, I
Okay.
think it's on Amazon. It's funny as hell, right? Really good show.
Okay.
Great stories. They're all little 22-minute episodes. And anyway, so magistrates, people who do that kind of stuff, night court, little small infractions, traffic court, things like that. A lot of states will allow them to not have a law degree or be a bar. And that goes back to the case of, until the Depression, even after the Depression, most of the West, other than California, was basically vacant. I think Nevada crossed 1 million citizens, something like 1965, 1970. Utah still isn't there. Utah, I think, is there actually. Wyoming still only has 650,000. So sometimes you have so few population, you don't have enough qualified people who want to sit on the court. So you allow magistrates to run, people to run as a magistrate. It's like, hey, you know what? I don't have a law degree, but I'm smart. The people like me around me. I can get my neighbors to elect me, and I'll go be the guy who takes care of the court cases or little tiny disputes between neighbors and stuff like that. So those positions exist today, and that's why they're created, because there just wasn't enough people in the first place. That's why they're overwhelmingly in the West.
So there's a lot of judges who just got the job,
It just got the job, but understand where
hires you as a roofer.
That's right. But understand where they're sitting. They're not the ones who are sitting down and going, well, okay, this guy's convicted. He's being charged with felony assault, or he's being charged with grand larceny because he stole a car. No, they're not the ones seeing that. They're the ones who are saying like, okay, you're, $50 shoplifting. What are we going to do with you? Oh, you're accused of kicking over the fence in your neighbor's yard. How are we going to resolve this? Misdemeanors, small things, traffic court judges, things like that. That's where a lot of them end up, because it's kind of it's not a huge, there's no heavy weighty legal decisions to be done here, right?
Yeah, but it's ripe for corruption, man.
It totally
small
is.
Towns, and you give it to some narcissistic psychopath. He's like, yeah, I'll do the misdemeanors, and all of a sudden he's making deals, getting sex.
Totally, 100%. That, but again, in small, tiny towns, that already happens, whether the guy has a law degree or not, right? I mean, corruption.
Yeah, that's true. Someone's going to do it.
Yeah, and it happens at even higher levels. I mean, corruption happens all the time, right? Corruption happens. It's just part of the world. It's part of our fallen nature. It's why people who want to do idyllic worldwide things that like, oh, if we all got along and be happy, the world would be great. No, because our human nature is to be greedy and corrupt. And you have to count on that. And you have to design around that. You can't just assume that you can't if we assume how to pack a stadium, how to pack a cow corral perfectly. If we assume spherical cows, well, you can't assume a spherical cow. They don't exist.
Right.
For your example, it might work, but that's nonsense because in reality. So you always have corruption. But I can see a case for if a person can get reelected every 2 years, every 4 years as a magistrate because they're doing a good job in their neighborhood and they're doing a good job in their town. People like them, and they're just helping take care. You know what? I'm handling all the traffic cases for this side of Henderson, Nevada, kind of a thing. And so real judges can go do real stuff. That's cool with me. I don't have a problem with that. Again, I trust a lot of my neighbors to make decisions with me or for me, kind of a thing. It was like, oh, you see something, and we do for each other. It's like, hey, I come by, I see something out, I just take it back for him. I don't ask him about it. I just do it for him, kind of a thing. So I see a lot of those low levels at. Now it does raise some red flags when they start to get above that level, but they should be limited just strictly to very low level misdemeanors.
Okay. Yeah. And I love talking to you, man.
Likewise, sir, this is fun. I love this.
Yeah, we should aim for like a steady once every 2 weeks. Like kind of
I'm game
make
for
sure
that.
we're good.
I'm game for that.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, these are my favorite episodes for sure. I learn, I like to re-listen to them and unpack what you said. Same reason I make music. I've never made music to get famous. I made it because I love these songs. And I want to listen to the same reason I do the podcast. So when I'm can re-listen to my episodes and be interested and learn, I love that.
Awesome. It's awesome, brother. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Well, I'll get this out there shortly.
All
Appreciate
right.
you.
Take care. See ya.
All right, be good.